Hello and welcome to this video. My name's Beckham. The subject here is Toolbox Essentials. We're not going to go into a great deal of detail, but there are three tools that are worth talking about. They are the Move, the Hand and the Zoom tool. The toolbar that we see on the left is an important place for us, and Photoshop also allows us to customize that too. We can get access to it using the little option almost at the bottom, or we can go to the edit menu and we can select them from here. There we are, down here at the toolbar, and there's all of the options we have. Now we can quite easily group tools that we use more often together with drag and drop. But playing around with the toolbar is not something that I think we need to burden ourselves with right now. I think this is something that's nice to know is there, but it's something we should come back to sometime later. Now the toolbar is generally made up of three types of tools. Some of the tools are going to make a physical change to the image in some way. I'm thinking here about things like the healing brushes, the clone tool, the dodge and burn tools, and of course there's a few more. Then we have those tools that assist us in using the first group of tools I've just mentioned, and we may include here things like selection tools, the pen tool, and maybe we could even add the zoom tool in here. And finally we have a couple of tools that are really designed for navigation. They're tools like hand and move tools, and they're going to help us find our way around the workspace and our images. Now most of the tools that we see on the toolbar are actually grouped with others. You can see a little tiny icon at the bottom right corner here. So if I were to go to the healing brushes, for example, and click and hold, you can see there's actually 5 different tools with that group. The one we see on the top of the toolbar will always be the last one we selected and used. And if I go to my selection tools here, you'll notice there's 3 with that one. There's 4 options here, so most of them are going to have quite a number of options beneath them. Many of the toolbar options will be demonstrated in practical projects within other videos. But there are 3 tools that are worth talking about now, simply because they're the ones we're going to be using all of the time. We have the zoom tool down at the bottom of the toolbox. We have the hand tool, and we also have the move tool right at the top. Let's start with the zoom tool. I'm going to select it from the toolbar. There's a shortcut key of Z that will also select it for you. You'll notice the zoom appears in the icon with a little plus. So I can go onto my picture and I can click, and every time I click you can see it's increased in size. If I want to take the image down in size, I've got a couple of choices. I can go to the top left, turn the tool into the zoom minus and then bring it back down. But there is a much easier way. If we're working with the tool in its default operation, which is generally in the plus mode, if we do zoom into a part of the image to do some work, and then we want to reduce the size just a little bit, maybe because we've gone a little too far, just touch the Alt key and you'll see that the zoom automatically changes to the minus, and we can click down to get it as small as we want. And as you can see, I can go really small. There is another great shortcut that we can use whether the image is small like this or massive, and that's Control 0, which will always fit your image on screen. So I'm sure you'll agree it would be a little inconvenient if we had to go right to the top left corner of the screen every time we wanted to zoom out of an image. So once we zoom in, all we do is touch the Alt key and we can zoom back out again. Now as you can see, I've opened up a different image here. There's no real reason for me to do that apart from giving you something different to look at. I've been using Photoshop for almost 25 years and I can't recall how long these two options have been in place, but I've never found a need to use them. So there's going to be a lot of options like this where I'm going to just skip past them. I can't see a great deal of point in explaining and demonstrating a tool that you're unlikely to ever use. So I'd like to move straight to the scrubby zoom. Now the scrubby zoom is just a different way to be able to zoom in and out of the image. If I was to go into any part of the image, click and drag, you can see I zoom in. Now once the image is zoomed in, I can click and drag to the left and it'll zoom out. Now there's a different way we can do this. If I select or deselect the scrubby zoom, now when I click and drag, I can drag out a little target and I can say show me that large on screen. Show me that section large on screen, not forgetting that Control 0 to fit the image back on screen. So the scrubby zoom is something you'll either take to or not, so try it both ways and you'll soon find one that suits. We do have some buttons at the top here which I think are pretty much self-evident. The only other thing I can say about the zoom tool, which is quite useful, is when we do zoom into an area of the image, and if we wanted to fit the image back on screen, yes, we've got the Control 0, but we've also got a right click, and I could go back to fit on screen from here, and as you see, there's one or two other options too. Now let's look at the hand tool. The hand tool is grouped with another one called rotate view, but I don't want to get bogged down with that. We just want the basic hand tool. When I select it, and H is the shortcut, if I click into the picture and drag, nothing happens at all, and we wonder what on earth this tool is for. If I were to right click with the hand tool, what we notice is we get some options that we see with the zoom tool. So let me choose 200%, and I think it's fair to say here that the hand tool goes hand in hand with the zoom tool, no pun intended. Because once I've got the image this size, now the hand tool comes into its own. As you can see, I can just scroll around any part of my image, but of course because it's linked sort of loosely with the zoom tool, once I'd done the work or moved into place, if I wanted to zoom out again, then I can right click and fit the image directly back onto the screen. Now the spacebar is a great shortcut for the hand tool, and it will always jump to the hand tool no matter what other tools we may have selected, but it only does it while we hold the spacebar. Now this doesn't sound all that exciting, but it is something we're going to need to do quite a lot. Let me demonstrate by right clicking again and selecting 100% magnification. Let's say I've located the area I want to work in. Let's just imagine also that I'm doing a bit of cloning here, so I'm going to select my clone tool, and I have a brush with my clone tool. So let's go up into, let me make my brush very big so you can see it. Let's say I was doing some cloning here. Please ignore my terrible work. I'm doing some cloning. But then I want to work on an area that's just outside the picture space. It would be very inconvenient if I had to go over to the toolbar, select the hand, move the image, then select the clone. All I need to do is touch the spacebar. The tool I had previously is just suspended while I hold the spacebar. I can click and drag, immediately move to another area and start working around there. And finally, we just have one or two options on the top bar which are the same as the zoom tool. Now let's take a look at the move tool because we're going to need that. I've opened a new image, and I've also slid out my layers on the right hand side because we're going to want to view them. We can select it from the top of the toolbox, but the V key is the shortcut. When I select the Move tool, if I go onto the picture's surface, I can try clicking and dragging, but nothing happens, but a window pops up. That window has popped up because Photoshop is not sure what we actually want to do here. With just one image open, we've got nothing to move, so Photoshop shows us this window. Let's just briefly read it because it really tells us all we need to know. The currently selected layer is a background layer. There you can see it over here, and there's the word, and note the lock. You cannot move a background layer or change its stacking order, blending mode, or opacity. Well, it's move that we're interested in here. However, you can convert it to a normal layer and then change any of these attributes. I can click here to convert it to a normal layer. When I do that, you'll just see the lock disappears to the right of the layer thumbnail. Now, why has the picture suddenly jumped like that? Because when I first did the click and drag, this was the movement that Photoshop couldn't do until we unlocked that layer on the right hand side. Now I've got the Move tool selected. Now I can move my image and it will snap back into place. When we open up an image into Photoshop, we can almost think of it as being made up of two parts. We have the canvas, which is this part here, and we also have the image that sits on top of it. We can almost think of them being glued together until we do what that panel asked us to do a few moments ago, which effectively removed the lock from the right of our thumbnail here. Now, we don't have to go through that click and drag method on the screen here and click the little box. We can just remove the lock. I'm just going to return this image back to its original by touching the F12 key, which is the equivalent of going to my File menu here and choosing Revert. And now you can see the lock has been replaced. So when I go over here and click and drag, I'm going to get the same warning panel again. I'll cancel that because all I really need to do to separate our canvas from the image is to remove the lock. And now I can move it around. Now, as you can see, there's a completely different picture on screen. This is a picture you're going to see in a video much later when we start talking about layers. But I felt it was worth bringing it back here just to demonstrate this Move tool, because the Move tool comes into its own when we've got multiple numbers of images on one canvas. So here, as you can see, I've got a white background. We can think of this as our canvas, and here we've got three images sitting over the top. So I can select the center one, and of course with the Move tool I can move it. If I select the right hand one with the Move tool, I can move that too, and also the other one. So these three tools are all going to be pretty vital to us as we go through the work in Photoshop. Did you enjoy the video? Well, I'm pretty sure you must have done, because you've reached the end. Can I encourage you to come along to my website and join my audiovisual and photographic forum? I need the members. I'd like you to join. You can get access to me and others who share your passion. You'll be made most welcome. If you're watching this video on YouTube, please click the Show More section for a direct link to Photoshop for Photographers that this video is a part of.